A group of teenagers who dream of becoming professional drivers are selected to take part in a racing camp and must defeat a giant snake and other insane challenges to save their town. Today, we're going to recap the first season of the series Hot Wheels Let's Race from 2024. Coupe is a young man who dreams of becoming a Hot Wheels driver. In order to achieve this goal, he decides to take part in the Mega Garage Camp with a group of teenagers who have the same dream as him. During their 10 weeks at the pilot school, the youngsters will undergo intense training where they will learn everything needed to be a professional pilot. At the end of the season, the student who has accumulated the most points will be the camp's winner. On their first day at school, the teenagers have to choose the car that will accompany them on their first race. Coupe doesn't think twice before choosing the GT Scorcher. However, Axel is also interested in the vehicle, and they both rush to get it. Just then, Coupe causes an accident and sends a tire flying out of the Mega Garage's window. When he realizes that the tire is destroying everything in its path, the young man decides to go out and get it to stop the city from being destroyed. Determined to help their new friend on this mission, Mac and Spark also choose their vehicles and use the Hot Wheels track to chase the tire. The problem is that the object is much faster than the trio imagined and rolls off the track at top speed. At this point, Spark decides to ask Brights to help her change the configuration of the tracks to keep the tire away from the buildings. With the help of Brights, the girl creates new roads and allows the trio to reach the runaway tire. However, just as Coupe was about to catch up, Axel accesses the control panel and dismantles the track with the intention of making things difficult for his competitor. Determined to overcome this challenge, Coupe speeds up the GT Scorcher even more and succeeds in his mission. For having managed to fix his mistake, the young man earns some points with Dash, and the woman congratulates him for having taken on the responsibility of recovering the tire. The next morning, the youngsters discover that they will have to take part in a race, and the winner will win 3 coats of fire. Whoever has the most coats of arms at the end of the camping season will be crowned champion. This race has several stages. In the first challenge, the competitors must dodge the huge water bubbles that are being thrown onto the track, and Brights ends up in last place. In the second stage, Axel takes the lead in the race, and Sidecar ends up trapped inside a cage, so he is eliminated. Finally, the youngsters have to cross a giant robotic snake, and Coupe reacts. The young man was in last place but manages to keep up with Axel, and they both enter the snake's mouth. At this point, Mac and Spark end up having an accident, and instead of continuing the race, Coupe decides to go back to help them. The young man then activates the GT Scorcher's wings of fire and pushes his friend's vehicle back onto the track. Meanwhile, Axel crosses the finish line and wins the race. Upon returning to the garage, the young man receives his precious prize and is furious when Coupe wins a coat of fire for giving up his victory to save his friends. At the end of the first day of camp, Dash accompanies the pilots to the dormitory, and the youngsters rush to choose their beds. During the night, the group hears a noise coming from outside and decides to go out to investigate. At that moment, they discover that there is a vehicle without a driver trying to get into the garage. Believing that Bone Shaker is a haunted car and is looking for the Hot Wheels 500, the youngsters decide to race him for the trophy. When challenged, the vehicle enters the track to take part in the competition, while Brights tries to get the Hot Wheels 500 trophy. After overtaking all his competitors, Bone Shaker wins the race, and everyone is relieved to know that he won't be haunting the town anymore. At that moment, Dash appears and reveals that the car is not cursed. The truth is that the woman has built an autonomous system so that the vehicle can get around without a driver. In the morning, the young people are excited for the next race and discover that they will be taking part in the food delivery challenge. First, they will have to choose a fast food outlet and run to pick up their orders. Then the group must race to the finish line. When the race starts, the drivers split up to go to the restaurant of their choice. By coincidence, Axel and Coupe have to drive on the same track and start competing with each other to see who is the fastest. During the race, the 2 cars end up colliding and are trapped by Axel's dust cover. Since they can't keep their hands off each other, the young people come to the conclusion that they will have to work together to get their orders and continue the race. Determined to overtake the other cars, the pair accelerates and does a spin in the air. During the maneuver, the 2 cars come together and cross the finish line at the same time. Thanks to this epic victory, Axel and Coupe win a coat of fire and realize that they work better together than as enemies. The following week, the grand opening of the Hot Wheels Super Fast Lava is about to take place. When a giant octopus controlled by Professor Review appears in town, the robot Squeakers goes to inform his friends and reveals that not even the police are able to stop the monster. So, in order to protect the inhabitants, Coupe and his friends decide to take action. After choosing their vehicles, they head towards the professor who plans to destroy all the Hot Wheels cars in the city. However, before the pilots could close, the octopus used its tentacles to create a giant propeller capable of pushing the youngsters onto another runway. Realizing that their initial plan won't work, the group decides to split up to confuse the creature. But the octopus manages to capture them and devours Axel's vehicle. Luckily for the young man, the animal starts to get sick and spits the car back onto the track. After meeting up with his friends, Spark comes up with a new plan, and they all drive to the car wash. The girl's strategy is to dirty the cars with soap so that the monster can't catch them. As the vehicles become slippery, the youngsters then drive under the octopus. In trying to catch them, the animal ends up tying a knot in its own tentacles. When the monster is immobilized, Spark pulls out a piece of fast lava and with a jet of water, sends the sea creature back home with Professor Rearview. For being primarily responsible for saving Hot Wheels City from the giant octopus attack, Spark wins a fire coat of arms, and the group finishes the day at the car wash to remove the foam soup. That night, while Mac is testing his maneuvers, the entire city's power goes out, and Squeaker has to turn on the power generator to keep the mega garage running. Checking the news, the group discovers that the streets are congested because all the traffic lights have been turned off. At this point, Dash reveals that the only way to reconnect the city's electricity system is through a generator in an underground tunnel. While everyone is excited to carry out this mission, Mac reveals that he is afraid of the dark. So, Bright suggests that all the team members climb aboard a glow racer. With the help of these glow-in-the-dark cars, the group manages to see their way to the tunnels and finally finds the generator. At this point, the drivers position their vehicles in the parking spaces and rev up the engines to restart the power supply. However, the plan doesn't work out as expected. To turn the machine on, they have to pull the switch at the top. To get there, Mac has to put into practice the maneuver he has learned and performs a 720 twist. He then returns to his spot, and this time the team succeeds in trying to restart the generator. Thanks to his courage, Mac wins a coat of fire, and the youngsters return to the garage relieved to know that Hot Wheels Town is back to normal. In the morning, the teenagers will have to face a new challenge as Dash proposes a treasure hunt. This test will be done in pairs, and Coupe is dismayed to discover that he will have to work with Sidecar as he knows he is Axel's best friend. The team's first stop is the tire store, and Coupe begins to suspect that his team is planning to help Axel win the challenge. So, the young man decides to work alone and leaves Sidecar behind. After picking up the first flag, as he refuses to receive help from his teammate, Coupe ends up having an accident and falls into the fast lava, while Sidecar takes the second flag. Furious, the young man continues the mission and blames his duo for being in last place in the race. But the truth is that Sidecar also wants to win the challenge and asks Coupe to trust him. Now each team has 2 flags, and whoever takes the third flag wins the race. The problem is that to complete the last stage of the race, the competitors have to pass a gigantic robotic spider, and both Spark and Axel end up trapped in the webcast by the creature. Then Mac and Bright suffer the same fate. So, the latter pair hatch a plan to get past the monster, and Coupe uses his car as bait so that Sidecar can get the flag. Thanks to their teamwork, the 2 youngsters win a coat of fire, and Coupe achieves the same score as Axel. After putting their skills into practice to solve different challenges, the young racers prove that they deserve to advance to the next level. Dash reveals that they will learn how to use the boosters in the next race. Boosters are nothing more than pieces of equipment that are attached to the track and that Hot Wheels drivers use to obtain special abilities. To teach them how to use these tools, Dash receives a special guest, and the youngsters are excited to meet Striker Spoiler in person. The professional driver is Axel's father and congratulates Coupe on being tied with his son. Determined to prove that he is the best driver in the camp, Axel uses the booster to speed up and ends up losing control of his vehicle. Seeing Coupe excel in his first test, the young man gets even more upset and tries to impress his father at all costs. However, as he still doesn't know how those boosters work, Axel ends up messing up and has the worst performance of the whole team. Frustrated at seeing Coupe getting all the attention from Striker, he decides to cheat and sabotages his opponent's car. What Axel didn't imagine was that his father would be the next to drive the vehicle, and when the man starts it, the cheese spray spreads across the road. At that moment, Stryker loses control of the vehicle and Axel decides to go and save him. In an attempt to reach his father, the young man uses the boosters to propel his vehicle and forms a barrier so that the Dragon Blaster can't advance. When he returns to the mega garage with his father, Axel apologizes for having sabotaged Coupe's car and feels ashamed of what he has done. After the confession, the young man is punished and loses one of his coats of fire, but he has the chance to get it back quicker than he thought. As Dash announces that the second race is about to start, now that he's in first place in the competition, Coupe gains an advantage for the next challenge. Dash reveals that he'll be able to use the boosters whenever he wants. As he approaches the fast lava, Coupe leaves a trail of oil on the track to slow down his opponents and manages to complete the first stage of the race. Axel is right behind him, and by passing through the speed booster, manages to overtake his opponent. Just ahead, the competitors have to pass an obstacle on the track, but Coupe's advantage allows him to make a big jump and not have to dodge the flippers. All the young man has to do to win is stay in first place. But just before he crosses the finish line, he loses control of his vehicle and gets stuck in an ice cream sculpture. Seeing all his opponents passing in front of him, Coupe uses his vehicle's gaseous jet to gain momentum and fly back to the track. Seconds later, he catches up with Axel, and the two battle for first place. By a long shot, Axel crosses the finish line first and wins 5 coats of fire in one go. The next race consists of jumping over hurdles, and after his last defeat, Coupe has the blood in his eye to turn the game around. The competitor who misses the jump will be disqualified, and Mac is extremely excited about this match as he is the best jumper on the team. When the race begins, the group discovers that their first obstacle will be a mud pit, and each competitor must jump into the tunnel to reach the other side of the track. In this first challenge, Sidecar is the only one to be disqualified, and all the others go on to the next stage. Next, they have to maneuver over 5 buses, and Axel is disqualified as expected. Mac excels in every jump, and Coupe decides to imitate him as he wants to become as good as his friend. Next, the group must use trampolines to pass through rings of fire, but Spark and Bright are unable to complete the challenge. Only Mac and Coupe make it to the final showdown, and Dash reveals that the two competitors will be able to perform their own customized jumps for a chance to show off their style. Having spent the entire race imitating his opponent, Coupe feels lost in this race and ends up trying to copy him once again. However, the young man messes up right at the start of the maneuver and accidentally knocks over a tower of barrels onto his friends. To fix this mistake, Coupe accelerates and uses his maximum speed to prevent his team from rolling out of the garage. When everyone is safe, Dash congratulates the young man on his spinning jump but reveals that Mac was the big winner of the challenge. The next day, the team gets a break from racing and decides to go to the ice cream parlor. However, they have been tasked with cleaning the dormitory and decide to split into 2 teams for a competition. The team that wins 2 of the 3 challenges gets to go out for ice cream, while the losing team is left to clean the room. As they are forbidden to run that day, the kids have to invent races that can be held inside the dormitory and end up making a mess of the place even more. In the end, the 2 teams draw, and the 6 teenagers decide to team up to clean the room so they can finish the job faster. After sorting out all the garbage, the youngsters see the cart heading towards the track builder. When it falls into the machine, all the garbage is copied and thrown into the city. Determined to fix the situation before the whole city turns into a garbage dump, the group has no choice but to enlist the help of their vehicles to collect the waste they find in front of them. After collecting all the objects they've thrown under the city, the group realizes that there's a tower of garbage about to fall on the motor show, and Coupe needs to speed up his truck to collect those items before it's too late. After cleaning up the city, the team drives to the ice cream parlor and finds it closed. Just then, the teenagers receive a call from Dash and are extremely happy to discover that the woman has bought banana splits for all of them. On Sunday, the kids decide to go out to eat at Bright's uncle's pizzeria. Suddenly, Professor Rearview calls Larry and places an order for 500 pizzas. If the order isn't delivered within 30 minutes, the customer doesn't have to pay. So, to prevent his uncle's establishment from going bankrupt, Bright says she will help him make the deliveries. With the help of her friends, she drives towards the handler or tunnel and manages to dodge all the obstacles that the villain has placed on the track. However, despite the challenges, the youngsters manage to reach their destination on time and discover that all those pizzas are to feed Professor Rearview's giant snake. After feeding the snake, it goes after the teenagers, and at the professor's command, starts destroying the Hot Wheel City cars to lure the creature away from the inhabitants. Bright uses the pizzeria's sign as bait, and when the monster devours it, the sign gets stuck inside its body. For the courage she showed in stopping that giant snake, Bright wins a coat of fire and makes her uncle proud. That afternoon, Dash arrives at the garage with a new vehicle, and the children are excited when they discover that with that transporter they will be able to receive their cars anywhere in the city. When she discovers that the transporter is broken, Spark decides to fix it and builds a Tyrannosaurus head on it to catch the vehicles. She then creates a ramp so that the cars can reach the track. After painting, Spark finishes repairing the vehicle and accidentally activates the automatic driving mode. When it sees the hundreds of cars passing through the city, the transporter rushes to devour them because that's what it was designed to do. Determined to bring the transporter back, the group drives towards the city, but Axel and Sidecar also end up being devoured by it. At this point, Coupe reveals that he has a plan and asks Mac to lure the transporter onto the track while Spark tries to tow it away. With the help of her friends, the young woman gets the strength she needs to drag the vehicle back to the mega garage and disables the automatic steering. Despite the mess those youngsters have made, Dash congratulates them on a job well done and frees all the cars that were devoured by the T-Rex. The next day, the youngsters have to complete an obstacle course to obtain more coats of arms. However, Coupe is so excited to do the fire in the sky jump that he fails to pay attention to the walls he encounters on the track and ends up crashing into the barriers several times. After completing the first stage of the challenge, the young man realizes that he is in last place in the race and needs to speed up to catch up with the other competitors. However, instead of paying attention to what's in front of him, Coupe continues to marvel at the ramp where he's going to jump and ends up being thrown off the track. After returning to the race, the young man continues to try to catch up with his friends, but ends up in the dust as his distraction causes him to finish in last place. When he finally makes it to the last stage of the race, Coupe comes up against a huge sign that prevents him from advancing to the ramp. At that moment, Dash gets in touch and asks the young man to go back to the garage as he missed the previous maneuver and was disqualified from the race. But instead of leaving, Coupe decides to start the journey again even though he knows he will no longer have a chance of winning the race. With Dash's permission, he retraces all the obstacles in record time and manages to overcome each one. Finally, the young man heads for the ramp and has the chance to perform his long-awaited fire in the sky jump. The young man then returns to the garage and discovers that Mac was the great champion of the race. Although he didn't win, Coupe is pleased to have been given a second chance at the race and more than ever he wants to be crowned champion. After several weeks of hard work, the drivers are preparing for the last race of the Mega Garage Camp. As well as tackling obstacles on the track, the youngsters will use boosters to gain advantages along the way and will be able to change cars at any time thanks to the transporter, which has been affectionately nicknamed the T-Rex. The winner of this race will win 10 coats of fire and be crowned the season's grand champion. On this special day, Striker Spoiler is invited to narrate the race, and Axel feels even more motivated to win as he will make his father proud. Coupe and Axel are in the lead, but the rest of the team is right on their heels and could overtake them at any moment. When he tries to pass the robotic Scorpion, Mac's car ends up being caught and thrown to the end of the track. Coupe then manages to cross the first obstacle and is followed by his greatest rival, who destroys the robot's claw. The second stage is the high-speed straight, and before continuing the race, Axel and Coupe decide to change cars. In the meantime, Spark takes the lead and uses a booster to spill oil on the track. In this way, the girl is able to slow down her opponents, but Axel and Coupe manage to overtake her. The two opponents are side by side, and there are only a few meters to go before one of them crosses the finish line. What neither driver imagined was that the race would be interrupted by Professor Rearview, who uses a dragon to destroy part of the track and devour the competitors' vehicles. At this point, Dash decides to intervene but ends up missing her target and gets trapped inside a giant bull along with Squeakers and the commentators. In order to stop the professor, the group enters the T-Rex to choose new cars and heads for the Mega Garage. However, the professor uses the dragon's weight to cause an earthquake on the track and prevent the drivers from getting any closer. Just as the youngsters are about to turn into barbecue, Mac and Spark appear aboard the transporter and show that they have made some modifications to the vehicle. During a duel between the T-Rex and the dragon, the two competitors buy time to reach the turbo launcher and discover that the equipment only has room for one vehicle. So, Axel lets Coupe go ahead, and after hitting the creature in the stomach, the young man frees his friends and crosses the finish line. After saving the city with the help of his team, Coupe wins the 10 coats of fire and becomes the camp champion. Now that the training period is over, the teenagers are very sad, but Dash reveals that she has something new. Thanks to the excellent performance of these young drivers, the woman invites them to continue their training and says that the winner of the second phase of the camp will become the new owner of the Mega Garage. So, what did you think of this series recap? If you enjoyed it, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more series recaps. See you next time.